Recently, my car rolled past 210,000 miles, and my maintenance costs were starting to creep up. So, I decided to start looking for a new car. While trying to find that perfect blend of something which would be more affordable, have the options that I wanted, and lessen my impact on the environment, I eventually started looking at hydrogen fuel cells. After all, these are supposed to be the cars that lower your impact on the environment to almost zero, right? Because clean hydrogen goes in and water comes out. Well, in reality, this is really more of a goal, and we're still very far away from achieving it. Hi, I'm Nathan, someone who's got places to be but doesn't want to burn gas to get there, and this is Save Money, Save the Planet. My research eventually led me to finding this extensive report on hydrogen, which is where most of the data from this video will be coming from. I've included a link in the description below, so feel free to hit the like button while you scroll down to find it. Long story short, hydrogen fuel does have some very promising potential uses, but cars, that's not one of them. Let's get into it. There are three main types of hydrogen: gray, blue, and green. Well, okay, actually there's tons more, but let's concentrate on these three for now. Gray hydrogen is made via a process called steam reformation from methane gas. This works by forcing a high-pressure mixture of steam and methane to get put into contact with a nickel catalyst. The byproduct of this reaction is hydrogen and CO2. Blue hydrogen is essentially the same process, but they install a carbon capture system over the process, which enables us to release approximately 70% less CO2. And finally, green hydrogen is made via electrolysis with water, where we use the electrolysis to break apart the water and save the hydrogen portion. Oh, and quick sidebar, the report that I read mentioned that not all things labeled as green hydrogen are truly green. Apparently, there's been some sneaky laws put into place in certain regions which allow companies to claim their hydrogen is green even when it's not truly made with 100% renewable energy. So, don't forget to do your homework. Alright, by now, you may have the same burning question that I had. How much of our current hydrogen production falls into the green category? The answer is an amazing, astounding, stupendous 0.02%. So, why the heck are companies pushing for us to use hydrogen? The unfortunate answer is that they want to keep their methane facilities going and just switch to supplying blue hydrogen, which, frankly, is a great way for them to remain profitable. But we're not here to talk about how to keep poor little oil and gas companies afloat. No, we're here to talk about how to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. And doing that should be easy. Let's just switch everything over to 100% green hydrogen. Done! Well, okay, actually no. You see, creating green hydrogen requires a massive amount of electricity in order to perform the electrolysis, and no country in the world currently has excess renewable electricity. On top of that, once we finish converting our electricity over to renewable sources, we'll likely be dealing with the upcoming water shortage, which means that we'll have to bring water recycling online, which will demand even more electricity. After we're done with those two goals, then we'll finally be ready to start devoting extra renewable electricity to hydrogen production. I found this infographic from the report amazing for showing why we should continue to focus on renewable electricity before hydrogen. Essentially, when all of the transportation and storage methods are taken into account, the electric car will be 70 to 90% efficient, while the hydrogen car will only be 25 to 35% efficient. There's really no contest here. One of the key things to remember while you look at this is that the electrical grid already exists, so we only need to focus on upgrading the capacity and getting some of our usage moved away from peak hours. Now, companies want you to think that hydrogen gas can just use the gas infrastructure which is already in place, but it can't. So we'd have to build out a whole new infrastructure just for hydrogen gas. Some people like to claim that creating a hydrogen gas grid would benefit us in other ways, because we could use hydrogen gas rather than methane gas for things like gas-burning appliances in our home and industrial processes which require low to medium heat. Well, the first thing that's important to consider is that hydrogen is only clean when it's used in a fuel cell. When burned, it still releases nitrogen oxides, which are 298 times as bad for the environment as CO2. Furthermore, This report helped me understand that we can't actually run any of these appliances on pure hydrogen gas, but will instead need to use mostly methane gas with just a little bit of hydrogen gas mixed in. Unfortunately, a report by Union of Concerned Scientists found that there is not enough biomethane, which means not from fossil fuels, to support this type of plan. So in the end, it would likely be easiest to run these appliances off of electricity as well. Okay, but you may remember at the beginning of the video that I mentioned hydrogen fuel having some potential uses. These are maritime shipping, aviation, industrial processes that need extreme heat, and long-term storage of renewable electricity. Maritime shipping and aviation are both viable use cases for the same reason. An electric battery would have to be large enough in order to power the vehicle through the entire journey, since you can't recharge halfway through. But once the battery is that large, the extreme weight will create a lot of issues. Now, I have seen some reports of electric boats and planes being produced recently, so I'm starting to imagine a world where battery power is used for short shipments, like LA to San Francisco, while hydrogen fuel cells are used for international shipments, like LA to Hong Kong. Creating steel with hydrogen fuel may still require burning it, but we would at least be able to achieve the extreme heats without using coke and coal, which is worse for the environment overall. As I mentioned earlier, the nitrogen oxide given off by the burning hydrogen would still be a concern, so we'll need to ensure that we don't rush into this process without fixing that first. And that finally leaves long-term storage of renewable electricity. As we move towards having all of our electricity produced by renewable means, we will still end up with times where we have far too much electricity. Think solar panels in the summertime, versus times when we have far too little, like those same solar panels, but during winter. Since these two time periods are so far apart from each other, storing the excess electricity in a battery really isn't an option. So, using that excess electricity to make green hydrogen, which is then used in a fuel cell to produce electricity in the winter, could be a viable option. But when you look at these options, please don't forget that the first goal still remains the same. Get to 100% renewable electricity. Alright, now we finally arrived at my favorite part of the videos. How do we use this knowledge in order to save money? Saving electricity is one of the biggest things that you can do because it will help lessen the work needed for us to get to 100% renewable, all while keeping more money in your pocket. So, you should ensure that you have energy-efficient appliances and that you use them in an energy-efficient manner. Don't leave lights on, adjust your thermostat to a less extreme temperature, or just turn it off completely. I'd also recommend that you visit the site for your electricity supplier and see what offerings they have. I was shocked to find that mine offered to come in, assess your home, and even pay to replace inefficient appliances. So, maybe you'll get lucky and have access to something similar. Now, if only I had enough money to own my own home. Anyways, and if your local area votes on whether or not to devote funds to renewable energy, then you should vote for that quicker than you can say, blue hydrogen is a scam by the oil companies. Unfortunately, the rest of the savings here fall under the larger umbrella of cost avoidance rather than true savings. We should absolutely avoid buying any hydrogen cars because they're similar to buying an abacus instead of a calculator. It's just going to be harder to use and slow you down. You should also avoid voting for your local area to use hydrogen in any processes that don't make sense long term. This will save our local area's tax dollars, which saves us money in a more roundabout way. And if you like the idea of hydrogen fuel in the future, then by all means invest in startup companies which are working on it. Just be sure to do your research and ensure that they are truly making green hydrogen, not one of those other colors. Also, keep in mind that you likely won't get much for your investment until 2035 or later, because we need to focus on other things first. Well, that's all I have for today. If you managed to learn something, then don't forget to subscribe so that you see my next video. Now go make a difference today.